tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a basic spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel. When we open up Excel, we're presented with this blank grid sheet, and we see that cell A1 is the active cell. So whatever information we type in on the keyboard is going to be entered into that location A1. We know it's the active cell because of the dark border surrounding that cell, and also because A1 is listed in the position indicator. So now let's enter in some text. I'm going to create a hypothetical grade worksheet for a class. Polls 556, policy analysis. Now whenever I enter in information, you'll notice that it appears up in this area referred to as the formula bar. When I hit enter, and now make the active cell below the one that we just entered information. I'll type in the semester, and I'll go down one more cell using the arrow key down, and I'm going to put in the label student names. And 3 students I'll enter. I will now move the cursor up to cell B4, and I will type in the label exam 1. And once I hit enter, it'll move the cursor down. Now I'll type in the grades for each student, hitting enter after each. Move up to cell C4, type in the label exam number 2, and again enter in the grades. And the same for exam number 3. And lastly, I'll create a column that'll be labeled participation. And enter grades one at a time, remembering to hit the return key, which will automatically bring us to the cell below. What you can see right away with the spreadsheet is that I've entered in an extra grade under exam 3 column. I will move the cursor to that cell where 90 is entered in for no student, and we can delete that information one of 2 ways. Either press the delete key that's next to the F12 key towards the top of your keyboard. That will delete it. I'll go back and do the undo button to put that number back in. Or once it's highlighted as the active cell, move the cursor up to the formula bar, click the left mouse button behind 90, and hit backspace twice to delete that information that hit enter. Now I've deleted the extra information that I had included accidentally into the spreadsheet. The problem we see is that we can't see all the information that was entered in to cell A5, A6, and A7, the column for student names. If we notice and move the cursor and click on cell A5, while only part of the name is displayed in the grid itself, if we look up in the formula bar that reports all the content of that cell, we see all the information has been included. It just cannot be displayed because that column is too narrow. What I'm going to do now is move my cursor up to the line between column A and column B header, and you notice now it becomes that bar with 2 arrows. I will press down and hold the left mouse button, and now I'll move the cursor to the right to make that first column wider. I'll make it even wider than I did the first time until we see now I can see all the information that is contained within it. We see the same problem over in column E, where participation as a label for that grade bleeds over into the next column. So what I'm going to do is also make column E a little wider so that the entire label now can be seen. The data that I've just entered into my class roll, I notice I left a student off this list. The easiest thing would be for me to just include that information in row 8, but I'd like to show you how to enter that information in the middle of a spreadsheet. So let's put that new student between Alexander, Suzette, and Rasmussen, Betty. To do that, I can highlight the cell Rasmussen, Betty, and move the cursor now up and click on the Insert button on the ribbon for the Home tab. And what that does is move the content of cell A7 down into cell A8. Now I can click on the Delete button to delete that cell that I just entered. I could also do this with a range of cells. Click and drag your cursor so now that we see across cells A7 through D7 are highlighted. I can now go up to the Insert button, click once with the left mouse button, and we see that adds in the blank cells above Betty Rasmussen. Or I can highlight those cells and click the Delete button. But the easiest thing to do is to just highlight the number 7 out on the edge of the spreadsheet, and now go up and click Insert. That will insert an entire row throughout your entire spreadsheet. Or I can highlight that entire row by just clicking on the number 7 out in the border and click Delete. But let's leave that space back in. Now I'll highlight the cell A7. I begin to enter in the name Richards, Billy Joe. Now when I hit Enter, remember it brings the cursor down to the next row below the cell I was in. What I want to do instead is to enter in information across the row. So now I have to move my cursor back to the next cell, Exam 1. I'll enter in the grade Billy Joe received for Exam 1. Now instead of hitting Enter, I'll hit the right arrow key, and that takes us now to participation. I'll enter in a grade of 90, and again press the arrow key to the right. Well, I'll enter in Billy Joe's grade in 83 for exam number 2, and again I'll press the right arrow key, which takes us to column D to the right. I'll now put in a grade of 88 for exam 3, press the arrow key, and then lastly enter a grade of 90 for participation, and press the right arrow key to enter it. There's one piece of information I meant to include for each student in the spreadsheet, but failed to, and that is the student identification number. What I would like to do is to have that placed between their student names and the column for exam 1. What I will do now is move the cursor up to the cell exam 1 and click on B4. Now if I go over merely and click on the Insert button as we did before, is it included an additional cell above the cell that was active. So each time now I hit that Insert button, it's just going to move the cells in column B lower. Let me go back to the Undo arrow and click that 3 times to get us back to where we were before. What I'm going to have to do now is come over to Insert. When I move my cursor to the Insert button, notice that off to the right-hand side of this button is a downward pointing black arrow. What I will do now is click on that black arrow, and you notice what comes up are several options. First of all, for inserting cells, also for inserting rows, also for inserting columns. If we go to the Insert Cells option, and I'll click on that, up pops a box here that gives me 4 different options. Now you notice the default, what is chosen, is to shift cells down, and that's what was happening before. It was adding a cell above B4 and shifting everything down. Now what I want to do is move cells to the right. I want to put exam 1 over in column C and have an empty cell in B4. So I will just click then on Shift Cells Right to highlight that, and now click OK. And now you notice what it's done. It has put a blank cell in B4 between the label for student names and the label for exam 1. I can continue to do the same procedure for rows 5, 6, 7, and 8. But imagine if you had a very long spreadsheet, that would take an awful lot of time to do it one cell at a time. Let me go back and undo my last operation to get back to where we were before. And now what I can do is use again the Insert button, click on that lower arrow, come down to Insert Columns. What that will do is insert a column to the left of the current column for exam 1. Click on that and you notice now we have our blank column. So that's an easier way for us to go about inserting columns than what we did before. Another way of going about the same sort of process is if I merely move my cursor up to the letter B at the header of the column, click on that. So now I've highlighted the entire column. Now when I click on the Insert button, it will automatically insert the entire column. I will enter in the label student ID and come down and start to enter in the 9-digit student ID number for each student. Now one thing that you notice here when I enter in student ID number, the information in that cell is justified to the left side of the cell. And that's very similar to what we see in terms of student names as well as all the labels we've put in. But yet if we look at the numbers for the scores for exam 1, 2, 3, and participation grades, we notice those are right justified. Now the default in Excel is whenever you put in a number, it will right justify that entry. Whenever you put in text, it left justifies the entry. Now why is the student number then identified as text and hence is left justified? Well, that's because we have a dash or a minus sign that's in between. By just putting in 999-25-5663, we're not asking to perform an operation yet, which we'll show you how to do that when we work with formulas. But now, because we have a non-numeric character that is part of the entry in that cell, the entire cell entry is considered to be text. Now you notice I did leave out one of the numbers for Betty Rasmussen's student ID number. What I'll do is go up and click on B8 where that information is located. Now I'll move up, and as I move to the formula bar, you'll notice then that the cursor changes into the I bar. I'll move it to where I want to put the information that I missed between the 4 and the 4. Click in between that area. Now I'll put in the number 5 for her identification number, or 4547. So now I'll press Enter. It's time to save that worksheet. I'll move the cursor up to select the File tab, click on File, come down to Save As, click on that button, and now I'll select the subdirectory where I want to save the file, and now I'll highlight the file name, which is currently Book 1 as default, and type in instead grades. Once that information is typed in, now I'll just click Save.